with us.
Steve, it's always my pleasure.
All right. Interesting times. So I guess we'll start, since we'll go backwards, we'll start with Mike Yurcich. Everyone found out yesterday afternoon that he was not going to be retained as the offensive coordinator. What was your thought on that, and then thoughts moving forward?
Well, I had heard something about 1:00, and I wasn't shocked that James was firing Mike Yurcich. I was shocked at the timing of it. I thought it might happen after the regular season. But after today and his response to my question, I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. It sounded like to me and to others that there were game plans being drawn up and they weren't being followed. That's what James said to me and said during the press conference today.
And I thought his answer to the follow-up on when he was talking about Ty Howell and Jaywan Sider, where he talked about about their loyalty to the program and so forth. I thought that was an interesting answer.
Yes. I mean, it seemed to me that there were little hints here and there, over Mike's 3 years on the staff, but it really started after the Ohio State game last month when James said we probably should have run the ball more when there were 50 pass plays called and just 18 run plays called at Ohio State. And then he expanded on that at his weekly press conference. So you knew things weren't hunky-dory internally. And then on Saturday, after Saturday's loss to Michigan, and his answer to me regarding my question about Drew Aller and saying that we're not calling enough easy passes to get him into a rhythm when everybody else is doing it in the country, that spoke volumes. But you're right. There's I don't want to. I don't know about loyalty or anything like that. I know Jaywan and Ty are really stand-up guys. I like both of them a lot. I can't speak on about Mike Yurcich because I don't really know him as well.
That's right.
But I will say this, that I think that's James wanted to hire Mike 3 years ago. He was eyeing him for several years, and obviously it just didn't work out.
It just didn't work out, indeed. It's interesting. You talked about the number of passes thrown in the Ohio State game. So now let's flip it to this game. Penn State had 22 first down plays in the game. 19 were runs and only 3 were passes along the way. What did you think about that when you saw that stat? Because I know you break that down.
Yeah, well, I thought they ran the ball. I think they should have run the ball more.
They ran the ball well.
Yeah, they ran the ball well. I don't think James mentioned this after the game that that Drew got too many pressures. I didn't sense that. I know he was sacked once, and I know at times he was pressured, but I didn't think it was something persistent. I thought I've been critical at times of the offensive line, but I thought the offensive line did a good job Saturday. I really do.
Yeah, I did too.
And to me, and you and I haven't had a chance to talk since we saw each other before the game. I thought perhaps the one sequence overlooked since the end of the game, even today, was the second Penn State offensive series. They had 5 snaps from the 4-yard line or inside the 4-yard line, and could not score, or could not score a touchdown. And I think 3 of the 5 plays were pass plays.
Yep.
And I thought that was odd, to say the least. I mean, you had to kick the field goal it was that early in the game. I get it. I'm not questioning that decision. You have to kick the field goal. But to me, that was an opportunity to make a statement, to take a 7-0 lead, and it didn't happen. And I thought that was obviously a sign of things to come.
Yeah, I don't want to think too much, But as I was watching the game play out, I felt like that played a role in like a couple of decisions, like to go for two when it was 14-9 and so forth. I felt like that sequence where they couldn't get in from the 3-yard line, I think may have influenced a little bit as to how they wanted to go after points.
It may have. We may never know this.
Right.
But I mean, I could see that for sure. I still disagree. This just me.
Right.
I would have kicked both points.
Right.
But that's another. To me, that's a secondary issue. I know a lot of people, a lot of the public, a lot of the fans have brought that up, and I think no matter what, Penn State still would have lost the game. I think there were bigger issues than that, far greater issues than that, and I think you may be right, Steve. That may have influenced a lot of things the rest of the game, but I just thought I thought Penn State, like I mean, Katron Allen looked good, especially on that 34-yard run. There was a nice hole, and I thought that was as good as I can remember Nick Singleton running inside. Yeah. For tough yards.
I agree.
I thought he had a nice game. I mean, his numbers aren't glamorous or anything like or spectacular, but I thought against that defense and running almost exclusively inside, I thought he did a good job.
On the defensive side of it, everyone knows they ran the final 32 plays as runs. I think there are two things that played into this. This is me, so you can tell me what you think about it. Mm-hmm. Number one is that Penn State was getting great pressure off the edge. I think that played a well. I mean, that's the only time they threw was early, and I think that influenced Michigan. And I also think his ability to be a great play-action passer, he's an 84% play-action passer, 84%. You can't put 11 guys in the box because you're always worried he's gonna play action and do something with it or bootleg it.
Yeah. I think J.J. McCarthy, I mean, his numbers are like, he only threw for 60 yards and he didn't throw a pass in the second half. I thought he had a big impact on the game.
Absolutely.
Massive impact on the game. And Penn State did do a really good job. Whether Michigan really respected Michigan's pass or Penn State's pass defense, whatever it was, I just think, or they were afraid, and it was true early. Penn State got pressure on McCarthy early, and then they went to the jumbo package. Brought in 6-7 blockers sometimes, and that really was effective. I mean, that drive after Aller's fumble, they went, I don't know if it was, I can't remember exactly the number, 40 yards, and they took up 8 minutes.
Right.
And that's crazy.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like the formula Illinois used 2 years ago.
In the 9 overtime
we're
game.
Just going to, pound. And that didn't win the game. I think they did that because they were that confident in their defense to stop Penn State's offense. I think that's what prompted that decision.
I agree with you. I think that you play offense to your defense, defense to your offense. I mean, that's not talked about often enough in what we do. And I think they looked over at their defense and said, you know what? We're going to keep the ball, chew up some clock, run some plays. You can watch, and when you go out there, we're confident you can stop them. I think that was in a nutshell their game plan.
Yeah, Steve, do you think? And you and I are talking, so I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
How much do you think Drew Aller's struggles against Ohio State and Michigan played into James's decision yesterday?
I think it had to play some role along the way because when he made your question in the postgame and the answer he gave, which is the first subject we discussed here, was like we didn't give him enough easy throws early. I didn't hear it, but I'm paraphrasing. Am I correct?
Yeah. That's what he said. Right? Yeah.
Well, that goes to what play is being called. And did I think Drew was sharp last week? Yes. That's why this one kind of like Ohio State leading in, I could see. Okay. this one kind of took me aback as to that's not the guy I saw during the week. But I think James' comment about he should have had some easier passes to gain some confidence.
Get him in a rhythm.
Get him in a rhythm. My apologies. Get him into a rhythm.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, no, because I don't want to use the wrong words here. I think that tells you a lot about what he's thinking about his young quarterback in a spot like this, and that's what he came out thinking in the game as to what they could have done to help him out in that area. So I think that's.
I think it did too.
Yeah.
I think it definitely played a factor in the decision, and whether that decision, I don't know. I'm sure. My guess, and I don't know a thing, is that James had been thinking about this since Ohio State, about making this move,
right.
And then Saturday sealed it when they weren't getting those easy throws, easy access throws. That's what they are, and I'm really taken back by how some fans, and not most fans, not all fans,
right.
reacted Saturday, and I don't. That's a whole nother bigger issue. I don't understand why adults get so upset and so angry and are screaming and screaming obscenities at whoever, whether it's James Franklin or anybody else. I just won't understand that. I just can't. And can you be disappointed? Of course. Can you disagree with James on decisions that he made? Yes, of course. But to stand in front of hundreds of people and just yell obscenities, I just don't understand that whatsoever.
No, this is what I understand. I understand and appreciate a passionate fan base. I don't want, from a Penn State broadcaster's point of view, I think one of the worst things you can have is an apathetic fan base. Right?
Yeah.
And you and I see that with all due respect. I'm not trying to put anybody down, but like when you and I go to Northwestern or we go to Indiana, we see the real passionate people there, but they're not in great numbers. That means the fan base is apathetic. I go to Indiana for basketball. Oh, it's passionate.
Totally different.
Right. So 180. Right. So I want a passionate fan base, but I also want a passionate fan base that has the ability to be angry, but to do it with some semblance of class.
Civility.
Yeah. Yeah. Civility.
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you can be. Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah. You can be angry.
Right. Yeah. You and I agree. Yeah. You and I agree.
Yeah. You can be angry. I don't blame you. That's how badly you wanted them to win. You're mad. You think they should have won. I totally appreciate that. There's a different way of expressing it.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
So let me ask you this. Okay, Penn State loses by 8 at Ohio State. They lose by 9 to Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Is this a case where there's a gigantic gap, a couple of play gap?
Yeah.
I mean, how close in reality are the programs?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and someone asked James that a little bit ago, and I don't think it's a big gap.
Right.
But it's a gap that's too big for a lot of people.
Yeah, sure. No, it's a gap where they didn't win.
But it is. You can't avoid talking about the 12-game. This is how I put it: the 12-game losing streak to Big Ten teams ranked in the top 10.
Right.
That to me is, forget everything else. Forget non-conference. Okay, that. And all but 12 of those games have been against Ohio State and Michigan.
Right.
Okay. Having said that, their one play or one call from, and it was the right call, from Curtis Jacobs returning a fumble for a touchdown at Ohio State, and maybe changing the whole complexion of the game.
And
maybe.
I don't know. And you and I agree, it was the right call.
It was the right call, absolutely. But that's how close that was.
Right.
Saturday, I didn't feel like, well, look, like we talked about earlier. If Penn State scores a touchdown on that second series, does that change things? How the game unfolds? I don't know. I mean, it certainly would have given the offense some confidence. But I think, to answer your question, I don't think the gap is as large as a lot of people who follow Penn State think it is.
Right.
I know I got asked last week, any Penn State fan that I saw when I was out in public here, how bad is it going to be? And I said, wait, what? I said, it's going to be a close, low-scoring game, which it was. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was basically a 17-9 game. That's the way I look at it. And Penn State would have punted if in normal circumstances, but they had to go for it. I get it. Yeah. But everything like that's the mentality that Penn State fans who came up to me, they go, how bad? Can they keep it close? I said, yeah. Yes. It's going to be a close game. Right. And I guess maybe, if you ask them today, maybe it wasn't close enough. Okay. But they all expected Michigan to win like they did last year in the Big House. So, yeah, I think going forward, you're not going to play Michigan now for another 3 years. Right. I don't think many people realize that. You do, I know. Yeah. They play Michigan at Michigan in 26, and then Michigan doesn't come back till 27. Right. So, now to me, all the focus is on next year. I'm not saying to quit the year or anything, but that mid-season 5-game stretch, I hate to get way ahead, but that's what you got to, okay, how do you manage your way through that in the middle of next season? Right. And so, all the decisions, and obviously I think that's part of the decision that prompted James to make yesterday too, is, looking at next year, we got to be better. Yeah. We can't stand still. We got to be better. And so yeah, I don't think the gap is as big as a lot of Penn State fans think it is. But now you're going to be measured against USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon too. Right.
And by the way, 3 of those 4 will have new quarterbacks next year. Just file that away for later, which is true. I mean, everybody sees. They see Williams, they see Penix, they see Bo Nix. Like, ooh, well, they're not playing next year, at least here.
And they'll be playing next year. They won't be. They'll be playing in the NFL.
They'll be in the 3-letter league because to me the key sequence was the fumble, and here's the reason why. You close out the half the way you want to with a touchdown. Mm-hmm. Now, you can debate the 2-point conversion all you want, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But you get the ball to start the second half, and this has been the Penn State pattern all season. And they get a first down, and then they get another first down, and in the process of getting that first down, he fumbles. You actually are starting to now get a handle on the game. And you've scored on 6 of your first 9 drives to start the second half of the season. On the sideline, you ought to be thinking, here we go again, and that crushed it. And I know they got a field goal out of it, but that was a momentum crusher, I thought.
It did. It obviously, it hurt them momentum-wise, and the fact that Michigan had the ball for over 8 minutes. Yeah. But I didn't think the game was over either.
No.
Penn State had the ball, not counting the last possession on which they scored their second touchdown. They had the ball 4 more times and did nothing. They only had 1 first down in those next 4 possessions.
That's right.
So I thought, was it a big play? Yeah, it was a big play. It was 17-9. But it's still a 1-score game. Right. And I think that the biggest thing is that on those next 4 series, you gained 1 first down, and that was it. And that, to me,
good point.
Another big reason why they didn't win the game.
Rich, always a pleasure. It's just great talking to you back and forth. Appreciate it so much.
Same here, Steve. Always a pleasure. Take care.
Go up to Scranton now and talk with Donnie Collins. Donnie, first of all, welcome back. Thanks so much for your time today on a busy Monday.
Oh, yeah, it's a very busy Monday, but any time for you, Steve.
Appreciate it very much, Donnie. Okay. So the primary topic of the press conference, for obvious reasons, is what happened with Mike Yurcich. In the end, were you surprised by the move, or is it more the timing of the move?
Yeah, I don't know if I was surprised by the move. I wouldn't have bet that it would happen during the season just because James has never made that kind of a move during the season. But I think there were some clear signs the last couple of weeks that this was not going to work out with Yurcich over the long term. And James, after the game on Saturday, when a head coach says, we have to create some easy throws that every team does, that's not a good sign for the offensive coordinator because it's obvious that that's really what this offense is missing. Some of those bread and butter plays in the passing game where you're going to get 5-6 yards and get yourself on schedule, get all those things that you want as an offense, get yourself moving, get your quarterback in the rhythm and all that. But yeah, and I agreed with James on that. But I didn't wake up Sunday thinking they were going to let go of Yurcich because that hadn't happened before. But to a degree, it's a bold move in the sense that if you got to make it, you make it now, and you get yourself in the market. But you also put yourself in the crosshairs for a couple of weeks here because look, you have now let go of 3 offensive coordinators in your tenure, and the next hire probably is going to be somebody that everybody's got to be really happy with, and it's got to be a home run hire. So I think a lot of pressure put on James, but I also in that regard don't believe James looks at it, or I don't think he shies away from the pressure of making a big hire. I mean, Manny Diaz was one, Yurcich was one. So I think he's got the courage of his convictions, but moving forward, I think this next one's got to be a good one for him.
Right. I felt Penn State actually ran the ball well on Saturday against Michigan.
Yeah.
Yet when you look at the first down mix, and the first down mix was fine in terms of the number of yards they gained, but it is unusual when you have 22 first down plays in a game you didn't win, and 19 of the 22 are runs. Do you think that factors into you have to have some easier throws in there for your quarterback, especially early?
Yeah, I totally think that. At one point during the game, it's funny you mentioned it, because I forgot I did this and all the excitement, but at one point in the game, I turned to Frank O'Dani, who was sitting next to me. I know you've had him on the show a lot. But I said to Frank, how often have they thrown on first down? And at that point in the game, it was 2. And I think the third one came pretty late in the game. It might have been the last drive where they had some desperation to them. But they were really, and again, you can't argue it because they were running it well enough.
Yes.
I mean, they were doing their job in that fast of the game. So if it's not broke, why change it? And I don't think they were necessarily off schedule as they were in other games. Definitely in the Ohio State game, they were 3rd and long all the time. But they were running the ball well enough. So I didn't think it was that big a deal. But I did before the game say, hey, look, first play here, run your safest pass play. Get yourself 5-6 yards, get going. And they ran it. And you didn't see that safe pass play. So I think you're right. I think when you look at the mix, when it's 19-3, that's no faith in the pass game. And I don't know if this is the offensive coordinator. You can have no faith in the pass game. You have to have those couple of plays that are going to work, and move yourself down the field, or at least the whole rhythm thing with Drew. It's a big thing. When he gets out of rhythm, he's not the same player. But when he's in rhythm, he's terrific. So you got to get him going, and I don't think in either of the 2 losses Penn State did. And the obvious response to that is, well, they lost to 2 of the best 3 or 4 teams in the country, and 2 of the 3 or 4 best defenses in the country, and I get that. But you still have to figure out a way. There's got to be somewhere where you can compete in that area, and make sure your offense is giving itself a chance. And I'm not sure running it 19 times, even running it well, is the way to go there against a good team.
To me, the key sequence in the game, and you may disagree with this, and I know they ran it 32 straight times. And with that quarterback, you're always worried he's going to play action. You can't just put 11 guys in the box because this guy's going to play action. and he's really good at it at 84%. But to me, the key sequence was you score at the end of the first half, and we could debate the extra point thing, but it's fine. But you score at the end of the half, you have some momentum, and you're going to get the ball to start the second half. And you're 6 of 9 on the season entering the game, scoring on your first drive of the second half with 5 touchdowns and a field goal. And you get a first down, and then you get another first down, but that's when Drew fumbles the ball. In getting that first down, they recovered. Now, I know it turns out to be 3, but they took forever to get down the field to do it, and they ate the clock and got 3 points. To me, that was the sequence between the two.
Yeah, I thought there was 2 sequences in the game, and that was certainly one of them. Where, and I don't know about you, I had a feeling they were going to score. I thought they figured something out. They came out pretty aggressive there, and I thought at that point, yeah, they're looking pretty good here. And it was, what was it, 14-9 at that point? Even if they get 3, you're feeling pretty good about it if you're Penn State. So I thought that was a huge play. But James is right. You're leaving points on the field. You have to be able to. Points are going to be at a premium in that game. And I think even with Michigan scoring 24, that's evidence that points are at a premium because they're averaging over 40. So. Yeah, I thought that was a big sequence, and I thought not being able to punch it in first and goal from the 3 in the first quarter was huge. I thought at that point that there was going to be some trouble there because, again, points at a premium, but you can't. I mean, that's a big swing there in the second half. Start, with Drew putting the ball, on the ground. The Michigan player made a good play, went after the ball, did what he should have done, but. You look at it, it's probably a 10-point swing at best because, Penn State maybe goes in and scores a touchdown there. You get 7, and you end up giving up 3 off of that. And the way Michigan plays, they play like Illinois did a couple of years ago, where they're just going to run it every time, and they're going to wind the clock down. They're going to take, like you said, take forever. They're just the opportunities in that game just weren't going to be there to score very often, to come back and to get into a rhythm. So I thought. It was huge there to fumble when you had a rhythm. That was pretty much, I thought, that was the moment, I think, when I started writing the column, because I thought this is probably going to be hard to come back from.
Right. I agree with that. And again, the ability of McCarthy to be a play action passer and be so good at it, or to tuck it down himself and run. That keeps you a little off balance. Well, why don't you throw 11 in the box? Because with this guy, you can't throw 11 in the box. You don't know what he's going to do with it. Illinois, in the 9 overtime game, did not have a guy that could throw the ball, not even in the same realm as this guy. And I think that played a role. And I think Michigan was smart. Their defense is playing well, so let's chew yards and clock.
Yeah, Michigan did considering they didn't have their head coach, I thought Michigan played a very smart, calm, and collected game. And, and you could do that with McCarthy because, I mean, it's weird because he was 7 for 8 for like 60 yards, and I was actually even a little more convinced that he should be in the Heisman race after that because I thought he kind of controlled the game because you have to honor him. Even if you're running Corum and Donovan Edwards all the time, you have to still honor McCarthy. So I thought he was a big factor in that game. And you're right. Michigan, I thought, there were some moments I think Penn State was chasing points. And again, we get to debate the 2-point conversions and all that. But I thought that the coaching staff played a little bit differently than they're usually doing as Penn State. And Michigan, really, even without Harbaugh, was pretty set in what they were going to do, and they just executed the game plan. And I think that, I don't think that was lost on anybody on Penn State's sideline after the game.
It's interesting. I was talking with Rich Scarcella, and he told me he was going through the parking lot, and people were asking, do you think they can hang with this team? Do you think they can hang with him? Well, now they lose to Ohio State by 8, lost the game on the road, didn't win. They lose this game by 9 at home, didn't win. In reality, as now you've watched this out, how big is the gap between Penn State and those two? Is it large? Is it small? Is it a couple of plays? What is it in your mind?
I don't know. I think it looks bigger than it really is, and You look at it, they're within one possession the entire game of Ohio State. And I think there was times, my criticism of them was they played like they were maybe 2 possessions behind at times against Ohio State. And they should have punted at one point and all that. And so I think it is, and I think it was pretty much the same with Michigan. I never thought they were uncompetitive in that game. I thought for most of the day they were pretty even. So, I didn't think they even did a bad job stopping the run. I mean, you're going to give up 200 yards when they're running the ball that much. So I didn't think that some of the things that have hurt them in the past against Michigan hurt them in this game. But is there a gap? Yes, and I think the fact that there is a gap is significant, and some of that gap is probably a mental gap too. And it's not just the players; it's the coaches, and it's a lot of things that shouldn't. Maybe be there, but they're there but they show up when you lose year after year after year to the same teams, and I think it starts to manifest itself. And look, I think talent-wise, Penn State's there. I think they are maybe a cut behind Ohio State on offense. Maybe I think style-wise, they're different than Michigan, and what Michigan's doing well right now, and what's making them successful is that their style is a little bit different, and they've got the quarterback right now who could run their offense the way Harbaugh wants, and Corum is a good back. But I think any given year, look, I mean, they're winning 10 games a year. They can't be that bad.
Right.
They can't. This can't be a. You hear the questions coming through. What do you think today? I think it'll be a good game. Oh, I don't know. Well. Yeah, it's got to be a good game. It was a good game against Ohio State. They were in it. They didn't play very well, but they were in it. I thought they played a little better this time. And if you take the fumble out of it, who knows? So I think they're close, but they're not there. The question I would, what I debate here with myself is, are they closer to being the 5th best team in next year's Big Ten or the 6th best team than they are to being the 2nd best team? And that's, I think, I don't have the answer to that, but I think that's kind of the concern I would have, because once, Washington, USC, UCLA, whoever comes in, little different conference. So this was probably their chance to get to position themselves for next year to be one of the big 3. But I think right now they're the 3rd. And that's not good enough. James has said it a million times. Not good enough for them. Certainly not good enough for them. Certainly not good enough for the fans. But it is what it is at this point. And I don't. I think there's a gap, and the size of that gap is hard to define. But I think it's a pretty good one mentally.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting when the 4 West Coast teams come in for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're big names and have had great performances. But they're also coming in, and 3 of the 4 are going to have new quarterbacks. Because there will be no Bo Nix, no Michael Penix, and in all likelihood, no Caleb Williams. So I don't really know how good they're going to be next year, because they're going to have new quarterbacks.
Yeah, and that's the big key. It's the great equalizer is the quarterback. And who knows, it could be anybody.
Right.
because there's free agency, basically.
Sure.
But yeah, if you look at – I happened to be looking at Oregon's roster from – a couple of years ago, and just to see some offensive stats for them, and I obviously the reason why, but I didn't know half of their players. I don't watch Oregon every week, so you're looking at it, the quarterback was Anthony Brown. I think he was a good player, but he's not Bo Nix, and Penix is, I thought Penix was a really good player at Indiana, and you put him around a better talent at Washington, and you put him on the turf. That's a really good quarterback there. So, but they do lose those guys, and who knows who they get. But it's every season's going to look so different now, thanks to the portal and things like that. But one thing the thing that doesn't look different is Ohio State's at the top, Michigan's there, and could you get to that level? But you would hope, if you're Penn State, that you can prove that you're better than the 4 guys coming in. Because if you're better than those 4 guys, you still give yourself a chance at that tournament.
And we don't know what Michigan's going to look like next year. With everything that's gone on there, and McCarthy may be an NFL draft guy. He's in his 3rd year now. So we don't know what they're going to look like next year, to be honest.
Yeah, they're not going to have those 2 guards, 77, Zinsser and Keegan are really good players. Yep. And I think they're able to they're able to get to the second level pretty quick. They'll be gone. Corum's gone. Donovan Edwards, I believe, is gone. McCarthy could go. So you don't know what Michigan is going to be. You have Harbaugh. I think it's likely Harbaugh won't be there next year. So, yeah, it changes. It changes every year. But when you look at it in the now, I think that's when it seems bleaker, and it seems like Penn State's in this precarious position where the losses mean a little more than the wins right now, and they have to figure out a way to change that going forward. And once you win one of those games against one of those teams, you're good. But the problem next year is they don't play Michigan.
Right. When it comes to the offensive coordinator hire, whenever it does happen, how interested are you going to be in the style of offense that he has a reputation for running, considering how Drew plays the game and how Bo Perbula plays the game?
Yeah, I think that's the entire key. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, and I like to follow a lot of these guys, all these new offenses that you see. The UNLV offense, for instance, is one that I was watching, and I know that's a guy. He's a Pittsburgh guy, the guy running that offense, and it's neat. They do a lot of fun things, and it's interesting. But you start to think, is that going to work in the Big Ten if they do something like that? So I would tend to think that James is going to go with somebody who kind of does what they currently do, only better. And I think that's really the goal, right? I mean, it's always the goal because that fits your personnel. And even in the transfer portal area, most of your personnel is coming back every year. So you want to bring in somebody who could play a style that's going to benefit Drew Allen, or who's going to benefit Bo Perbula in a year. Or, it's going to work Nick Singleton and Katron Allen in, because you're hoping you have all those guys. And someone who could develop receivers, scheme them open, things like that, and most importantly, someone who players are going to want to play for. So I think, I don't think it's going to be someone totally dissimilar from Mike Yurcich, and I don't think it's going to be something totally dissimilar from what Franklin has always said he wants to do. It's not going to be some kind of crazy new scheme coming in. But, that said, there are guys out there who have worked for James and done his system before. So I think, sometimes I think that's overvalued. You see these lists of guys' names. Here's possible candidates, and nobody really knows because James didn't tell them. So nobody really knows who's being looked at. And I'd be very surprised if anybody was being looked at right now, unless James has a candidate that he knows he's bringing in. But I think when this is a year that I might put a little more stock in that, because I think it's got to be a hire that the fans are going to like. I don't know if it has to be, but I think it would help, and I think it'd have to be. It would be somebody with some familiarity with what they do, who could come in and, I guess, take them to another level, or a level they've been at in the past.
Donnie, great conversation as always. Thanks so much for giving us the time today. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, Steve.